All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's get into this game. Game 1 of the 3-game death match between Blazeroe8 and KinglyBingly. This was their third match. This is game number 1. We're going to take a look at this from the perspective of KinglyBingly in this game. And the reason for that is because Kingly was able to maneuver the win in this game. I could do the eyelid exercise. That would keep me fit. All right, I'll bite Blazeroe. What is the eyelid exercise, Blazeroe? What is the eyelid exercise? What do I feel like this is a setup for a punchline? So c4, knight to f6. Now here's what I know. The early moments of this particular game, I was watching the KinglyBingly stream. And this position arose, and KinglyBingly played here the move knight to c6. And I remember him saying somewhere in these early phases, probably I would say in the first 6 moves, I'll tell you when the moment comes, and he says to the crowd, he goes, okay, I've got a special line prepared against Blaze's English today. Let's see how he handles it, okay? So he had something set up here. Now, I've had to face against this before as black, and also I've played this move order before in an attempt to get sort of a King's Indian attack style position, but with c4 incorporated as well. And the move that's I think is the best here and that bothers me the most when I'm playing the white side is when they immediately play this move d5. This move d5 bothers me a lot. Now how I handle it as white is pawn takes, and d4, allowing the possibility of pawn takes, bishop takes, and we're going to get ourselves into an isolated queen pawns position. This might not be to everybody's, this might not be everybody's cup of tea. Maybe some people don't like the wide open positions and just prefer to keep things closed. But there's a couple of things that you have to keep in mind when you're playing in the opening, especially when you're like a 1700, 1800 and lower rated kind of player. You want to always be careful not to telegraph your plans. Even if you've got a clear plan, you want to play the move order that is going to cause the most confusion and is the least committal. The reason for that is in case your plan should change based on the position. If you have an idea in your head of what you want to play beforehand and you stick to it rigidly, you can miss opportunities and you can even find yourself in a bad position because you were not actually playing the board. You were trying to get into a certain position you had in mind before the game started. Always play the board. So already even on this move, e4, I think probably it would be a preferable move if this was white's intention to play the move d3. Why make the committal move e4 allowing for the d5 push? Why not wait and see? So here's what happens. e4, knight to c6, knight to f3, d6, okay? Now imagine if instead this position had taken place. d3, knight to c6, knight to f3, and d6. Now you can throw in e4 if you want to. You have the extra option of playing e3, and you can also play the move g3. So you have more options available because you have not made this committal move of e5. And if instead of this move, knight to c6, you played the move d5, then you can make your choices of pawn takes or whatever it is that you want to do in this situation. So you're reducing your opponent's options and you're increasing your own. These are small, subtle differences. These aren't going to show up in your chess.com statistics as mistakes. They're just small, tiny inaccuracies, and most importantly, a stronger player will pick up on whether you're trying to play a system that you've prearranged rather than playing the moves based on the position. So e6, d3, bishop to e7. Here's another example of a move that demonstrates to me that black already has a plan in mind. This move is not a bad move. This is maybe a top 3, maybe even a top 2 move if you stick it in the computer lines. And the reason is because simply you're going to castle. You're making ways so that you can castle. Once you're castled, you can start thinking about a middle game plan. And I'm going to get into the chat right after this. I'm sorry that I'm missing what you guys are saying there. I will get into that in a second. So this move is telegraphing to me. It's telegraphing that black has certain ambitions and intentions. In reality, it's not the way that it seems. It seems to me that black is intending to castle right away and wants to keep a closed position. But this move, bishop to e7, is probably not the best move in the position. Now, white has an extra option of playing d4 here. And a lot of times, sort of mid-level players will miss this because it seems like such a strange thing to change your pawn structure, having already played the move d3. But d3 did what it was intended to do. It allowed for the e4 and the c4 pushes, contesting the center. But now black has made two committal moves in the center with their pawns. Now if you play the move d4 and some sort of a pawn push takes place, you can win your tempo back with d5. So you're not actually going to lose any time in this. You're not losing any time. There's not really much the black can do, and you're going to get the biggest possible center in this situation. So now that your pawn has done its job, the best move on the board is probably d4. Let's turn on the Mr. Silicon for a quick second and see what the computer says. Sure enough, the computer thinks white's a little bit better to the tune of about a pawn. Whereas instead, after the move played, which was bishop to e2, still a respectable position for white. He's maintaining his opening edge, but clearly not as good as playing d4. Okay. Let me just quickly get into what you guys are talking about. Hey, KB's in the house, guys. Let's throw some shout out for KB. KB, I really like your new GG emote. I'm always looking for new GG emotes, and I really like that one. So I'm happy to have that. Let's give a shout out to Mr. KB Khan. Excellent man and an excellent streamer. The initiative for the time being, says Chess Comet. Close one eyelid, count to 10, then open the eyelid, then do the same with the other for 10 reps. Wow. The eyelid lifts. That's a good one, Blazeroe8. That's almost as good as the fork lift, you know? You just lift a fork to your mouth over and over and over again. The fork lift technique. Improving chess, one has to know how to play against and with the Isolani. Yeah. What was that famous Tartakower quote? He said something like, I can't remember what he said, but it was this famous Tartakower quote. Maybe somebody can find it. About the isolated. Basically saying if you don't know how to play the isolated queen pawn, it's basically like saying I don't want to play chess. I think white should have played a Botvinnik system. Well, anyways. So both of these moves are signifying to me that the opponents are happy to keep the position clean, closed, and they don't really need to make moves that might be a little bit better objectively. They just want to keep this position closed off for the time being and not get too hasty. And this is in keeping with their previous style games. So b6, I think this is where Kingly said, okay, I've got this line and let's see how he handles it. b6 not a bad move. It's an interesting move. I don't really know if moves like this were necessary if the intention was to now castle on the queen side, which is what black's preparing for now. Castles, bishop to b7, b3, another sort of a passive move, just keeping the pawns all kind of boxed up. White's initiative is probably gonna have to come on the queen side anyways. And then comes this move, queen to d7. So I mean, these are not like it's just a little bit of a passive opening, but both sides are doing the same kind of a thing. So for the last number of moves here, d4 has been on the table, but Blaze just has different ideas of what he wants to do. So this move a4 to me is the first move of sort of the middle game, and it comes on the 10th move. a4 poses black some problems. So black has to make a decision as to what he wants to do, and it's going to change the complexion of the game. For one thing, black can play the move a5 and just say, okay, we're not going to have any of that. We'll play a5, hop a knight into one of these like juicy squares up here, and then I can like rush on the king side. Or you can choose to make a rushing move immediately. Or you can make a move like e5 and say, you know what, I've waited long enough. I don't want to relinquish control of this d4 square. And this can also open up for possible queenside attacks in the future. Let's say pawn to here, knight, and then like queen here or something. Just like, that's just kind of a random example. I really prepped with the idea of playing mind games, since he's always roasting me with vampire jokes. Nice, nice. Blaze says, I don't want to tire you out, so you can only do 5 reps. Okay, I'll start with 5, and I'll keep a journal, and I'll work my way up from there. I'll let you know how it's going, Blaze. HK Plays. How's it going? Oh, this is Harlem Knight. How you doing, sir? Welcome, welcome. That's a shout-out alert. We'll give a shout-out to your regular... Oh, it's not going to let me do that. But I can do this. I can do that one. Haha! I have multiple shout-outs, and we didn't give a shout-out to Chess Coach, guys. How could I not give a shout-out to Chess Coach? The coach is in the house, guys. Okay, so let's take a look how this goes down. So the move A4 was played. Now black goes for this H5, okay? I was kind of sketchy about this move. I didn't really understand this move at first. For one thing, you're given this nice juicy G5 square to the knight if it wants it as an outpost. H4 could be played. There's not really any particular threat. It's not defending a particularly valuable square, but it's the start, it's initiating the start of a kingside attack. And actually, the computer does not mind this move at all. Now, me instinctively, I would play this move A5. Here's the reason why. On playing H5, I'm still concerned about this A pawn push. Here's my idea. Let's say knight takes. This is a type of a theme that takes place a lot in Sicilian dragon variations. Okay, B4, knight C6, B5, knight to A5, and rook takes. After pawn takes, queen to A4. Here's the problem we got. Possibly queen takes pawn, then we're going to have rook over, and we're going to yoink this pawn in the corner. I don't really know what happens after that, but that's just some pretty heavy pieces that are a little too close to my king. And whenever you have this sort of a turtled pawn structure like this, okay, you have to be a little bit cautious, because even if the pieces behind them have, you know, some level of mobility, the mobility is going to be sort of omnidirectional. It's not really going forward. You don't have open files in front of you that you can quickly release the tension and get your pieces out of the way. So that means that this king is stuck in a corner. There's no easy way. It's not like you can just make some move with your queen and then wander over onto the white squares. That's not happening. There is no square like that. You would have to come back like this, and then you're just only going to give your king one escape square on D7. So you have to be a little bit cautious that you don't get into this kind of trouble. So instead, in this position, if this after knight takes and the pawn push, I mean after knight here and pawn forward, you almost have to do something like knight e5 or something. Knight e5 or possibly knight b4. Something like this. Is that playable? So that kind of a thing scares me. So instinctively, when I see a move like this, I just want to stop that. I want to just put that fire out and play a5. Kingly decided I'm going for it. Goes for the kingside attack. So the move knight to b5 was played. King comes over to b8. And now the knight comes back to d4. So ultimately, white ended up taking control over the critical d4 square. He recognized that was a critical square. But still, the pawn was better. All the pieces were pointing in that direction. All right, it's the freeing move, and so I still think it would have been better to have played the d4 than the knight. But this position actually turns out okay for white. I'm at work dying. It's like 100 degrees in your office. What? Why is it so hot in your office? You guys having a heat wave or something? We're supposed to go up to 23 degrees in the southern part of my province in a few days. 23 Celsius, which is like whatever, 70 something. That's pretty hot for this time of the year. RPD is in the house. That is an automatic shout out. RPD is in the house. The ever improving RPD. He played knight to d4 really quickly. Okay. Yeah, that's an interesting move, and so black responds to this move g5, which is probably one of his only sort of errors of the game. And it's not a critical error yet, but it's a very intriguing move. It's a very provocative move. And Kingly was talking about wanting to play some mind games and stuff. This is an excellent mind game, this move G5, because you're tempting white to take essentially a free pawn. But by taking that pawn, it's going to open up the position dramatically. So the question is, does Blaze have the iron, the fortitude to make a decision like that, to take that pawn, or does he just want to, you know, again, like sort of like with A5 on the other side, does he just want to put out that fire and continue to play his maneuvering game? White definitely has a space advantage. White has a space advantage. This pawn push is still available. It's 72 here, and I work for the government, so they did not turn off the heat. Gotcha. Let me give you guys a quick Timbit break here. Hey, Jason Pierre Sweeney is in the house. Jason Pierre Sweeney, I am currently munching on a Priestly. That's right, I stuffed a Timbit into the jam of my donut. Got myself a fresh box of Timbits. And I'm working on those, folks. How you doing today, Mr. Sweeney? That is an automatic. That's an automatic shout out for Mr. Sweeney. Guys, thanks for joining me today on the Trout Show. We're taking a look at the Blazeroe versus KinglyBingly deathmatch. Let's continue with this game. So knight takes c6, bishop takes, and white chose this move knight to d4. White decided not to go for this. So on knight takes, I'm assuming that Kingly was going to play something similar with rook over to g8 like this. Is that correct, Kingly? Now let's say something happens like h4, then possibly this knight move is interesting. If bishop takes and pawn takes, queen takes is not on the table because of pawn push. Queen takes, you just take. Also, possibly this h-pawn could get in some trouble. So instead in this situation, maybe like has to play here, but then we've got bishop takes, pawn takes, and rook takes. No, we can't do the rook takes because we've got a bishop in the corner. So actually, can we do that? So actually, we probably have to do this e5 first, don't we? So maybe you can get away with this. Maybe you can get away with this. I feel like white can probably take that, but I can understand why you wouldn't want to have all of these heavy pieces all lining up on your king like that. I totally get that. Hey, card counter Chris is in the house. What? Dude, how you been, man? Card counter Chris is in the house, guys. That is a shout out. Dude, I haven't seen you so long, man. How you been? I'm on my vacay right now, but I was getting antsy. I'm working on my book, but you know, it's like I just needed a break, man. Do something else. You've been busy? Cool, man. This is like the first vacation I've had since I started streaming and doing online lessons. This is the first time off I've had. So I forced myself to take this time, and now I'm getting a little bit antsy. We're doing other things to you. Check the last game I was playing above. Okay. A Final Fantasy, what is this? Final Fantasy 14? Is that seriously what we're on now? Final Fantasy 14? Now that would be interesting. That would be very interesting to see you play that. I played a lot of the old Final Fantasies, up to about maybe 7. Yeah, well, you know, I mean, let's face it. You're a Magic. That's your forte, man. That's your niche. But there's nothing wrong with branching out and trying some other things, man. You know, all the top streamers are doing that these days. You know, trying to keep their keep things fresh and keep their crowd entertained. So we're taking a look at this game of Blazeroe8 versus KinglyBingly from their deathmatch. It's deathmatch number 3. Very entertaining game. So now we got this move, knight to d4. So White's decided that they're not going to break things open for black. They're just going to content themselves with this lead in development, which is also perfectly fine and definitely safer. So finally, black is going to get this move e5 in. That's a really important structural move. And it is a committal move, but I think it's an important one. And now really there is the possibility of moving this queen someplace one day where the king will be able to run away and escape if it ever gets in any danger. So this is kind of a critical move. He didn't save the bishop. It does allow for this knight takes. There's also the possibility here of knight to f5. The only thing I would say about knight to f5 is maybe black can play bishop to f8, but this knight is on a really powerful outpost. So I would have strongly considered knight to f5. You know, anytime you can get a knight outpost, that's a situation where there's no pawns that can aggress it. So on this board, there's literally only 2 pieces that can ever chase that knight from that square, which are the knight on f6 and the bishop on c6. And neither one of them is anywhere close to being able to do that right now. So this knight can just sit cozy right in black's part of the board, in black's territory, and kind of put a cramp on his style. And it's useful for defensive duties as well as offensive duties, because obviously black is coming rushing with these kingside pawns, trying to get some play. So, but instead, knight takes, queen takes. So I mean, white's got the bishop pair here now, and we're starting to get to that point in time in the game, and I often mention this where I often mention this, that I like to break the middle game down into 2 sections. Now, it doesn't always work like that. You could say that about any part of the game, I suppose, but in particular, the middle game, I find that there's 2 distinct plans which can take place in the 2 different portions of the middle game, which is your largest part of the game of chess. If an average game of chess was 40 moves, assumedly one side or another is going to castle and start preparing a middle game plan in the first 10 moves or something like that. 10, maybe 15 moves, but probably 10, okay? If it's a 40 move game, 10 moves, and then there's 20 moves of middle game, and then 10 moves of end game or something like that. These numbers are not set in stone. But generally speaking, the middle game is your longest phase of the game. And so a lot of people say to me, well, can you teach me how to play the middle game? I don't understand how to play the middle game. And there's books where you can get like the Encyclopedia of Middle Games, and you can go over repetitive structures that take place in certain openings and stuff. But the middle game is a very mysterious part of the game. And so it's very difficult to try to sort of give some bite-sized pieces of information that someone can utilize practically over the board regarding the middle game. It's not like the opening that has a certain set of specific moves that have a valid reason, right? You're trying to develop your bishops and your knights towards the center so that you can have the maximum number of potential moves and quadrants of the board that you can go to. In an endgame, you might be trying to push a passed pawn on one side or the other. You might be trying to utilize a material advantage to overpower your opponent. The middle game doesn't have those. So here's how I like to break down the middle game. There's the early middle game where you first castle and you first start making a decision as to what, based on the position, what is your plan? What is the pawn structure? What structure is fixed? What structure is mobile, right? And where are my pieces placed? And is there a way that I can improve the placement of my pieces in the most efficient way to carry out a plan that I've deduced that I have in this position? Once you get your pieces into the best, most ideal position that you can, there comes a point in time where you're going to have to break the position open. And this break is going to take place whether you have an advantage and you're trying to go into an endgame and utilize your advantage. It can take place if you're at a disadvantage and you're simply trying to reduce some of your opponent's pieces that are attacking you, or maybe your pieces are not mobilized, and so you want to get them into the game, so you have to break the position open so that you can get some extra activity for your rooks and your pieces, and try to muddy the waters in a slightly worse position or something like that. But there's always going to come that breaking point. There comes a point of no return where your pawns have gone as far as they can, your pieces are on the best squares that they can go to, and it's just time to break it open. Once a position breaks open, there's big, long highways of squares, rows and files for your heavy pieces to move, and then the game starts developing very quickly. A mate can come very quickly, a heavy exchange of pieces can come very quickly. Now in this game, we are on move 16, and I can already see that breaking point is coming soon. One side or the other is going to have to make a committal decision that's going to eventually transpose this into an endgame. RPD says piece mobility, king safety, material, tactical and positional advantage, pawn structure, weakest piece, all middle game issues. Yeah, exactly. There's a lot to the middle game, and it's very mysterious. So, but if you can kind of see it as far as it's the same thing with the opening. A lot of people want to play a certain exact opening that they like because they've prepped it and they've worked really hard on it. And I understand that. And it's great if you can get into those positions, but chess doesn't work like that. Your opponent's not always going to play the opening that you want them to play. Nor should they. They should deliberately not play your opening, right? That would be foolish, right? So what you have to do, and even if they play your opening, every opening is going to be a little bit different, right? So what you have to do is deduce what is going on in the particulars of your position to the best of your ability. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What is your opponent planning, right? And then once you've developed your pieces onto their original squares and castled, now you can start thinking, well, is this really where I want my pieces? Should I pull some of my pieces back? Should I push some of my pieces forward? Should I regroup a knight? Should I regroup a bishop? Should I break a pawn open and use my rooks on an open file? Whatever, right? So that's that sort of early middle game plan. And if you can kind of remember sort of the same thing as in the opening, don't play just a set of moves that you read in the book. Play what you deduce in the position is the best move and what the position is calling for, because every game of chess is unique. And if you can do that in the middle game, it's going to help your game a lot, because now instead of trying to figure out what you're going to do over the next 20 moves, you're taking it in a bite-sized chunk. You're taking the next 10 moves and saying, okay, what is my plan? What is my opponent's plan? And how can I most efficiently utilize my pieces to execute my plan and stifle my opponent from achieving their objectives? I think what narrows it down is what matters most. But yeah, complicated stuff. Yeah, because that's what I mean. Like there's so many things rolling around in our head. Same thing in the opening, right? Oh, you want to put a pawn in the middle. You want to develop your bishops and your knight. You want to get castled. You want to keep your eye out for pins and different types of tactics, forks and pins, and discovery checks, right? There's a lot of things going on. So how do you know which one of those things to do at which time? Do I develop a bishop or do I develop a knight? Do I push my e-pawn? Do I push my d-pawn? Do I control the center by occupying it? Do I control the center with my pieces from the outside? You know, so just by breaking chess down into chunks like that, I think that it makes it more manageable, and eventually as time goes on, you'll gain the experience to sort of sew the different pieces of your chess game together more seamlessly. So now that I've rabbled about that for a little while, let's get back into this game. The move b4 was played. I really like this move b4 a lot. That's absolutely the right idea. And that was available, for a number of moves. The queen back to b7. I mean, that's really not where this queen belongs. I think I'm not sure if he was trying to continue to eye this g2 pawn, or if he was intending to come back like this. But now this move, a5, is quite annoying. So now comes the rook over to g8. So definitely the breaking position is coming soon here, guys. Pawn takes, and queen up to d2. I mean, I think that I would have assumed that he was going to play queen a4. I would have assumed queen a4, but you can see how quickly things start activating once a pawn break takes place like this. Already with just this one half open file, it's become a major theme in this position. And it's something important that black has to watch out for. Now before I do this, let me just tell you that as I was watching this game, I was watching it at this exact moment from Blazeroe's point of view, and Blazeroe was the white side. And I immediately noticed a move that I thought was extremely valuable that I would have played. And I put it into the computer. The computer likes it as well. The move played instead was queen to d2. Now, from this point of view, just out of curiosity, what would the viewer here play in this position as white? Just out of curiosity, I'm curious to see who else might have seen this. Sometimes too much thinking can be bad. Alekine thought for an hour on a move against Capablanca, Cambridge Springs. He tried to refute bishop to h4 with a dubious pawn stack. He didn't follow up correctly for developing the light squared bishop to b7 after playing b6. Okay. c5 comes to mind, says Chess Comet. Disco Inferno. Hey, what's up, man? Disco Inferno also likes c5. c5 is definitely the move that I wanted to play here as well. The break, folks. Breaking the position open. It is a committal move, so you can't play it hastily. You have to think about it. But I find that move harder to spot on this side of the board. Am I wrong? But look at it from the other side. Look at it from this point of view. All of a sudden you start seeing these heavy pieces coming down on the king. The queen and the king in front of each other. Suddenly this move c5 seems very natural. The idea is if pawn takes, if the d pawn takes, I've got bishop takes, pawn check. And wherever the king goes, pawn takes. It's quite nasty here. It's quite a nasty position. I don't really think that you can take this back. If bishop takes, I got bishop takes knight. If pawn takes, I mean, probably just rook over to here. I mean, there might be something fancier as well, but rook to b1 looks respectable to me. And instead of pawn takes, then I'm going to get to play pawn takes. Queen takes bishop is definitely off because of rook to b1. So actually, I don't think that black can take that, and if that's the case, then this pawn continues to be aggressive. This pawn continues to be dangerous. And I'm not even sure if you can just simply run away because of stuff like pawn takes. And maybe like pawn to here. So I don't know if these lines are exactly, I'm not really trying to find like critical lines, but this move, c5, I think was really important for white. And he missed that opportunity. And even if you're like a player who likes to play close positions and a little conservatively again, there always is going to come this breaking time. So if you can see the middle game as the two different parts, the original plan that white has was this. Okay, let's go back to when white first castled. Okay, castles, boom, b3. Queen, bishop to b2, castles, a4, boom. Okay, how many moves did that take? How many moves did that take? 3 moves. 3 moves later, and white has a clear objective, a clear plan. The attack is coming on the queen side. He's going to leave all of his pawns back on the king side. He knows that a king side attack might be coming, but he's made a decision. He's going to utilize the space on the queen side and try to aggress this king, which is castled on the queen side, which means that all of these pawns can be thrown forward. Okay, we come to this position. Boom, the break. Pawn takes, and immediately white has the opportunity for c5. The position is broken open in the course of 2 moves. This position, the complexion of this game is completely turned around. The objectives are very different. White is not trying to find a plan here anymore. The plan has worked. But white has utilized this plan. He's broken open on the queen side, just as he has intended. Black has not achieved his objectives yet, although he has some aggression that white must keep an eye on. But white has achieved their goal. Black has not. That means the time to break is now. The move c5 is very dangerous. The complexion of this part of the game, this is not an endgame, guys. Nobody is trying to get a pawn to the other side of the board right now. This is still a middle game. But the nature of this phase of the middle game is very different from the previous 10 moves. So instead we get this move queen to d2, and the position is not fully broken open yet. Now black's going to get this move h4, and very quickly white finds themselves, and if we flip this board around again, very quickly white finds themselves feeling a little fearful. Okay, oh boy, that stuff's starting to get a little close to my king, right? And so white makes a decision and plays the move g4, trying to box up the king side. So now black has succeeded in their objective, in their middle game objective. They're starting to break through on the king side. Now, he didn't end up taking this pawn, which would have been, I think, a very interesting move. Would have been very curious to see how this turned out. If pawn takes, maybe something like maybe rook h3. rook, rook, bishop. I guess we just move back somewhere for now. Say here. Let's turn this back around so I don't confuse you guys too much. At any rate, now white is playing defense and black can have some fun here. Castling queenside looked very optimistic. I mean, it was an interesting line. He wanted to play something different. He's played 3 matches now, so I think Kingly he wanted to try something surprising and get Blaze into a little bit out of his comfort zone. I spotted because the D pawn defends the E pawn. Yeah, gotcha. Disco Inferno, guys. I didn't give a shout out to Disco Inferno. I don't know if you're still here, but Disco Inferno is super cool, man. I haven't seen you stream in a little while, but it's nice to see you again, man. Always enjoy your stream. Hope the chess is going good. I'm on my vacay right now and just streaming to kind of break the monotony because I'm a little bored, to be honest with you. I got 9 days off of work, so yeah, no problem, man. So G4, H3, F3. You can really see the style of white's play. When you play moves like this, you're telegraphing information to your opponent, and a stronger player will pick up on that. These are fearful moves by white. The white is responding fearfully in a position that doesn't call for it. So if I was the black player, even if my moves didn't do anything, I would play aggressively if for no other reason than to try to encourage my opponent to play passively, to try to stall up this attack that's potentially taking place on the king side, or sorry, the queen side, which I think is a lot more frightening. Let's take a quick look at Mr. Silicon. Take a look at what Mr. Silicon says. Almost 3 pawns of advantage for white. A substantial advantage for white. And yet white is playing defense. Kingly's gotten into his head, folks. Disco says too much snowboarding lately. Gotcha, buddy. Well, enjoy it while you can, man. Enjoy it while you can. Where do you go? Just out of curiosity, Disco. Because I got a friend from LA area, but they go to, they snowboard a lot. But they go to Utah. Will Wolf is back. And that's the end of the stream, folks. Good night, everyone. No, I'll stick around. I'll stick around. Even though Will Wolf is here, I'll stick around. Okay, knight to E8. Snow Squalmy. 15 minutes from Seattle. Oh, cool, man. Nice. Nice. I've done a very limited amount of snowboarding in my life. Only because my mom once bought me a cheap snowboard from, like, Canadian Tire or something like that. You know, no wax, nothing special at all. Just some cheap $100 snowboard at the time. And I tried it a few times on the local, the local Mogul Hills or whatever else. I've never really been any I'm not a real snowboarder. I've done it a very small number of times in my life. But it was fun. Yeah, that's it. That's what I'm saying. It's going to be 23 in my province, 23 Celsius, which is like, what's 23 Celsius, guys? Like 75 or something? 70 Celsius? Thankfully, I didn't break any bones. I mean, I was on the moguls, and I remember doing a couple of, like, going down the moguls on my ass. Right smack on my ass. That was not fun. That was not fun. I'm lucky I could still have kids. I would say more than that, than broken bones. But it was fun, and I liked the snowboarder peeps. They reminded me of skaters, like skateboarders. Same kind of people. Okay, so rook to A2, knight to C7. Okay, here we go. We've got a regroup taking place. Boom, there we go, knight to E6. So this is how you can tell we're still in this sort of middle phase or early phase of this middle game. But the position is not fully broken open yet, guys. Both sides are still trying to carry out the fullness of their plan. And so black's still in the mode of trying to find out where to put their pieces on the best squares. Now, this square is definitely juicy. The square is juicy. This square is potentially juicy. Even D4 could be a juicy square. So now this knight's a lot better placed. I wish that I was better with the commands, because I would love to time out Wolf, but I don't want to have to time the poor guy out for 600 seconds. But he timed me out. He timed me out on the Kaido Lupin show because I informed him that Lucy Moody was a guy, and he's like, no, it's not a guy. Her name's Lucy. And I'm like, yeah, I know. I thought it was a girl too, but it's not. It's a guy named Lucy, or like it's short for Lucifer. So it's a guy, and like I have his pictures on my Discord. No, I was flirting with her. It's a girl. I'm like, well, you might have been flirting with her, but I'm just pointing out that it's not a her. It's a he. It's a guy. And then he like timed me out. He's like, yeah, Kato's really like strict about that kind of stuff. He just didn't want anyone to know that he was flirting with a guy. So, I mean, now the cat's out of the bag because I've got a microphone. I have a microphone, Wolf. So you will listen to anything I have to say. Okay? You will listen to every damn word I have to say. What was that line from Wedding Singers? But anyways, I still call, even though I have the picture in my head of Lucy Moody, and we've had a large number of conversations and DM and everything like that. Super cool guy. Really like Lucy was literally my very first sub ever. The very first show that I got affiliate, Lucy came in within 5 minutes and subbed me, beat out Jason Pierre Sweeney for the first sub on my show. And I referred to Lucy as a girl for like 6 or 8 months. Just because I don't know how people identify. So like if somebody identifies as whatever, that's how I'm going to address them. So I saw the name Lucy and I addressed Lucy as a girl. And still to this day, I sometimes accidentally say she when referring to Lucy Moody, even though I can clearly see the picture in my head, just because it's so weird to call a dude Lucy. But at any rate, no shame in that, Wolf. And I'm just teasing you about the timeout. Although I would time you out if I could time you out for like 10 seconds, just as a vendetta. But I don't actually want to like really time you out where you're gonna leave the show or something. Okay. So let's get back onto this game. So now comes this rook move over with rook f2 a1. Okay. The move played here was knight to f4. I'm just kind of curious. Okay. Now let's say that, okay. I don't think it's going to be a good move here. The computer doesn't seem to like it on first inspection. But if you were desperate in this situation as black, like if there was a checkmate coming here or something like that, and you found yourself in this situation, there's a miracle resource to try to get out of it. You could try the move a5 here. The reason a5 is interesting is because on pawn takes, we have queen over and we've blocked the rooks from getting in. So this is something that you should keep in mind if you ever find yourself in one of these situations, which happens. It happens on the other side of the board in like the King's Indian attack, or like the Perk or the Closed Sicilian, a lot of those kinds of lines where they're aggressing your king on a fianchetto position. So if they ever get this pawn up here and they start aggressing you on this half open file as a miracle resource, you can try the move a5, because if they don't take it out passal, then you've just blocked their rooks, and if they do, then you have a chance to block it, and the rooks have lost their access. So the move knight to f4 was played instead. Black's basically saying, okay, you know what, go for it. If you want to take those, I'm willing to try it. If rook takes, queen takes, rook takes, and king takes. So now the question is, does black have some like sack line or something like bishop takes? pawn takes, queen over, and then like queen here or something. But it looks like bishop c5 is holding. So I guess that's not available. Okay. It's still something to kind of keep an eye on, but maybe just something slow roll it, like play bishop to here with that same threat. The idea is I just want to bring my queen over and check on a3. So knight to f4. We have bishop to a3, queen e5. Let me see which line you're talking about. You're saying in the event of rook takes, queen takes, rook takes, king takes? Is that the line you're talking about? So rook takes, queen takes, rook takes, king takes, bishop takes, pawn takes. I'm saying check, king here, and you had a different idea. What I'm thinking is that maybe instead of bishop takes, maybe we can slow roll it. Like maybe, we can't slow roll it because if nothing else, rook to a8 is a possibility. It's just, it's not quite working. It's not quite working for white. So that's why I'm thinking maybe like, I mean, yeah, it's just not quite working for me. Let's turn on Mr. Silicon for a quick second. If rook takes, queen takes, rook takes, and king takes, the computer's looking at moves like d4, bishop to f1, which is fine. It's just a bit of a slow roll. And it's saying that these lines are about pawn and a half, pawn and a third up for white. Not quite a one game, but clearly better for white. But there's still plenty of room to go wrong here. This game's not over at all. And it's definitely not quite the best line, so I think Kingly handled this phase really nicely. So bishop to a3. Maybe this was what White was intending here. I've been up since 5. I guess that's why queen a2 to e5 looked good. Gotcha. Okay, now I'm getting it. Hey, Sparry's in the house. What's up, man? Queen to b2 maybe, Disco was saying. Okay, so let's see. So you're thinking if rook takes, queen takes, rook takes, king takes, bishop takes, pawn takes, and you're thinking queen to b2? Still, this bishop move is annoying. In fact, even in this line, I can just play knight takes bishop, forcing queen here and then the bishop move. Yeah, it's a neat idea, but it's just not quite there yet. It's not quite there yet. So maybe that's why he was thinking bishop to a3. So the rook comes over to d8. Finally, that's a good move. Okay, once again, we're still in that phase, guys. We're still in that phase. The position is still not broken open yet. We're on move 25 right now. In these number of moves, it doesn't make any difference. It's the same thing with the opening. Basically, the opening ends in a situation where one side or the other castles. Once you're castled, then your middle game starts. If your opponent hasn't castled yet, then once you castle, that really puts the pressure on them because now your king is safe in the corner. So you're really putting the onus on their king. Right? They're in danger of getting stuck in the center of the board. So once one side or the other castles, the beginning of the formation of a proper middle game plan really takes place. Generally speaking, these are just rules of thumb. And then there's this early middle game where you're trying to regroup your pieces to the best possible squares from their original development. And then there's a position where finally you've gotten all your pieces on just the right squares. You finally break the position open. The dust settles, you find yourself in an end game, and hopefully one side or another is winning by this point in time. And so this is another useful regrouping move. The knight is regrouped to an excellent square on f4. The rook is regrouped from g8. Now that it's done its job, it's no longer required to be on that g file. Black is starting to turn the tide in this game, and shows more understanding, I think, of this phase in the game, where white is still seems loath to break the position. So bishop to b4, rook up to d7, rook to a4, rook up to h6 is interesting. In case of an emergency, if you had to, you could push this pawn if you needed some sort of lateral protection. I find this is one of the things that I find has been making Kingly's game a lot stronger lately. He spots these lateral moves a lot quicker. This wasn't always the case. I feel like something clicked in it for him, and he spots these things easy. I've seen him do this in tactics puzzles too. And he'll say something like, "Yeah, you got to watch those lateral vision. You know, lateral blindness is a thing," which I think is a coach line. But he spots these moves a lot easier now. You know, Kingly says time trouble coming up. The Kingly comeback, it's not over till it's over. That's right, this game is not over at all. The break hasn't even taken place yet. So we don't know what kind of an endgame we're going to get into yet. So white makes a good move here, decides to save his bishop. He's going to hold that bishop pair. And now here comes his d4 move. That is a committal move. That's a breaking move. And black decided to take that. So there's a direct threat here. There's also the possibility of bishop to c5 possibly. White decides to just take it. Rook takes and takes back with the c pawn. I mean, this is definitely not gonna work out really great for black, but he's come to the breaking point. Black's just decided this is it. It's time. My pieces are on the best squares that they're gonna get to you. In this position, let's see what we can do to make these pieces a little bit better. What I'm actually thinking is that d4 might be a better square. I wonder if it's possible after bishop here and bishop takes to play pawn takes. I know it's a little dicey. Just curious. Because if pawn takes, we're just going to play rook takes and we're pretty happy. If the bishop tries to move somewheres now, it's got bishop takes, let's say. I'm thinking probably, can we do that? Bishop takes, pawn takes. This is very dicey, says Bari. Queen takes. King over. Yeah, it's just not enough stuff. So I mean, this just is not working. I understand the frustration, and he's in time pressure, so you can't really be too too down on Kingly. Maybe bishop to f6 is interesting. Threatening to play d5, because now at least we're breaking open on the diagonal. At any rate, pawn there, bishop, rook takes, pawn takes, knight takes, pawn takes, queen takes. Well, the break is on, guys. Queen takes pawn. Queen to e6. Queen to g8. Ouch. Oof, that's not going to work. You got to play rook down. Gonna play rook down. Assumedly he's got to play rook here. If he plays queen to g7, then this rook move is pretty nasty. After queen here, we might even have rook takes pawn. Oh no, we don't because of the rook here. That's too bad. That is too bad. But we can try this one. Oh no, because of the pawn here again. So probably still have to play this. Yeah, white's surviving again. That's just not working for black. Okay, so the king up. Rook takes, king up. The king's going on a merry journey. You see how fast things break open? We're on move 34 now. You see how fast things break open once the files get open and everything gets buzzing around? The game's going to be over soon. Or at least it's going to get into an endgame. Rook takes, queen check, king up to d5. I wonder if we can play f4 here. Let's catch up. Sorry guys, I'm way behind on the lines. F7 pawn was a thorn in your side. Yeah. Isn't that often the case, eh? Yeah, no, you're right, Spar. Black didn't have any compensation there. Hey, Max is in the house. Sorry, Max. I'm just doing my normal slow on the chat thing, kind of getting absorbed in this game. This is from the Blazeroe versus Kingly match. How you doing today, Max? Rook e8, I missed. Gotcha. It's the Mikhail Tal quote RPD about a dark forest. F4 Spari also says it's dicey. So I mean these, I'm just trying to look for like sort of shots and stuff like that. I'm probably just being content with being up a piece here. There's no real reason for fancy moves. My idea is on pawn takes. We've got bishop check. And mate is coming very quickly. But why to give options to black for a cheapo? It's still a problem though. King here or something. Hoping for this kind of crap. Anyways. Alright, so let's see how this game finishes off. So queen check. I cannot believe this game was still going. This game should have been over around here. Blazeroe, having played this breaking exchange nicely. Kingly was in really bad time pressure here, guys. I remember at one point in time around here, he had like 20 or 30 seconds. So they had a time increment, okay? So if he could keep on making his moves and get a playable position, he had a chance. But this game is completely over. This game's about like, let's see what the computer says. Like mate in 2, 3? Yeah, mate in 2. Rook to a2 and then mate. So instead, queen check. All right. And then white makes a terrible blunder and plays queen to a3. And he had time to think. And Bingley, with 20 seconds left, snaps that puppy up. Still a difficult position. Still not a forced win here or anything like that. A couple of pawns up for black, okay? This is not, the game's still not over yet. But now Kingly's got to play out the rest of this game with his heart beating, and this happens a lot. There's another thing that happens that he's kind of like, you know, like B-class level and like intermediate levels of like club player and stuff like that. Is that when the result of the game changes very dramatically, just for like a move or two, it's such a shock to the system. You know, it's kind of like when a guy hits a home run, you know, in baseball, and the pitcher is so flustered over it. And he goes out in the very next pitch, boom, the guy hits another home run, back-to-back home runs. How does that happen, right? How can that possibly happen? The very next pitch, boom, out of the park. That happens so often in baseball. Why? Because the guy's flustered. He's still thinking about that mistake he made in the back of his head, right? So noticing when the position changes evaluation, like in this case, going from dead lost to like totally winning this position, it can be very frustrating and you have to regroup yourself. And just take a minute, cool your jets, figure out what your new plan is, because the position has completely changed and so is your plan. You're no longer in swindle mode. The swindle has taken place. So Bingley carries out the rest of this game nicely. Rook up. Here in the event of king takes, he's got this pawn push cheapo. Not a big deal, but why to allow that? So black plays the move rook to d4. Here I prefer the move rook to d5. Keeping an eye on the f4 square. Also now does allow for the king takes us. So I think just the easiest route. King takes, rook takes. Poor Blaze was kicking himself again. You got to regroup yourself no matter which side of the board you're on. You got to regroup and try to figure out. And now Blaze is in swindle mode. Okay, there's no time for a move like this. Okay, there's no time for a move like king to f2. You're in swindle mode. Don't play defensive here. You're not going to lose any worse. If you're losing, you're losing. You're not coming around with this king all the way over to here and stopping this pawn. That's not happening in this position. You gotta push the pawn. Push immediately. Push again. Push again. If he pushes, push again. Look down here. Push again. You got no choice. You gotta go for swindle. You don't have anything here. So the pawn goes up to, once the pawn gets up to b3, it's basically lights out. The rook comes down, and that was the end of the game. So that was unfortunate for Blaze. That was definitely a winning position for Blaze. Mate in 2, folks. Mate in 2. Kingly, though, was not phased. He didn't give up. That's why you play to the end, folks. And honestly, I thought that Kingly was really starting to mount a comeback and was really playing parts of that middle game better. He just was so cramped right out of the opening. Just a very crampy opening. So just inherently, there's a large number of moves that White can make in this position that will all lead to an advantage. Just because White has so many more options, he's just got more space. And so Kingly was fighting out of a paper bag in that game. But I thought he did a really good job, and I thought there was times in that middle game where it would have been just for him to get the draw or even get the win. So at any rate, that's how the game turned out. Let's kind of blaze through this one. Let's take a look at this one from Blazeroe's perspective. This time Blazeroe's on the black side. KinglyBingly starts off with some c4 action. Okay. And look at this. Surprise on move 2. It is not a London, folks. It is not a London. Some sort of a chess game taking place here. What is this? Some sort of a legitimate chess opening? Kingly, what are you doing? Chess comment says, yeah, I'm impressed. Blazeroe says, mate in 3. Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, you gotta know when to go into swindle mode. Alright, so we've got ourselves a Dutch. So for the record, when I teach my students to play the Dutch, I like to teach them to play the move e6. The reason I choose to play the move e6, and assumedly they would normally play the move d4. The reason I choose the e6 move order, if they play e4, you're going to get a chance to transpose into a French, which is fine. You're going to get into a closed position. If they continue on now with c4, now you've got this move f5, and you're not as worried anymore about this gambity line or g4s, okay? So I prefer this move order. It doesn't telegraph. Once again, save your committal moves as long as you possibly can. Even if you've got an excellent bishop move and you're certain that that's where you want to put your bishop, and your bishop hasn't moved from its original square, but it might have chances to go to the other side of the board. Like, let's say this bishop has a perfect move to go to f5, but it's also, the b pawn has been moved, so it could also go to a3. Okay, even though you're certain that you're going to this f5 square, delay that move as long as possible. Don't make the committal move until you have no choice, until it's really, truly accomplishing something in the moment, because don't telegraph to your opponent what your plan is. So I like that move order a little bit better. Once we get into this, it's like, okay, a Dutch is taking place. We know right away. It's a little bit of an interesting exchange here. I'm not really accustomed to this bishop takes knight. I wouldn't normally do something like that. But Kingly decided he's going to get rid of that. He didn't want these hopping knights in a close position. So e6 gets played, bishop to d3, and queen to e8. This is another one of those moves that signifies to me that this player, Blazeroe, has a prepared opening plan that he wants to accomplish. He's seen this move before, either he's played this before, or he's seen this on a DVD or something like that, and he knows that the queen has a lot of nice squares on the white on the light squares on black side of the board from the e8 square. But the real reason to play the queen over to e8 is to bring the queen out to h5. If you don't do that, it's kind of a moot point. Also, this is not a stonewall. You haven't played d5 and c6, so you still have issues you have to watch out for that you don't get into trouble on the diagonals. So that means you're not going to be able to just sort of shoot up your pawns up the board and try to aggress White's king. In fact, White is not even castled yet. So once again, you're telegraphing too soon what you intend to play. And if you are going to play that, you have to continue on with queen to h5, which I don't believe the black did, or at least didn't do it right away. But if you want to play the Dutch, e6 is pretty much asking not to get into the Dutch. It gives you an alternative to get into the French, yes. But it's a lot better than getting into some crappy g4 or e4 line and getting into a position that's absolutely not the style that you're trying to play if you're playing a Dutch. You're not playing a Dutch because you want to get a wide open, crazy tactical game. You're deliberately playing it not to get into those positions, Pari. I like e6 most if you play the French and the Nimzo, Queen's Indian. Yeah, I mean, it gives you those extra options. But even if you're certain that you want to play the Dutch, don't telegraph that to your opponent until you have no choice. Black could try b6 and fianchetto the light squared bishop. Yeah, I play that line sometimes as well. And there's another line where they play like there's another line where like the queen comes over to b8 at some point in time. Are you guys familiar with that line? And then b5 and b4 get pushed. I'd have to go back to see where that variation goes, but maybe Spari can tell us. But that used to be a really fun line back in the late 80s and the early 90s. A lot of Dutch players were playing that line. Okay, so queen of c2, knight c6, a3, good move. And Kingly said during the game, he's like, oh, he spotted that move because Kingly was intending to do that fork, which would have been very nice. But Blazeroe spotted that. Or wait a minute, no, wait, what's going on? No, this is Kingly as white. Well, that's so weird. I could have sworn I remember that conversation. Am I right, Kingly? You're white in this game? Yeah, you just played black? That's so weird. I remember you saying that. I remember you saying that he spotted your move and stopped you. Did this happen in 2 different games? That's so confusing. At any rate. So yeah, so this is a good quality game. So this bishop comes back to d8. It's a little bit of an unusual move. I guess he's intending to shoot these pawns up again. Kingly came in with a game plan, guys. Kingly came in with a game plan. And here we go with h4. That's a strange move. I mean, maybe g4 is playable here now, but I wouldn't be playing on this king side of the board right now. And if you are going to play on that king side of the board, at least castle first. Don't start making an attack. Don't make an attack when you're not castled, guys. This is not an opening move. This is a middle game move. Your opening is not finished yet. Stay in the mind frame. This is an opening. You got to stick with the plan. You're supposed to be putting a pawn in the center, which you've done, developing your minor pieces, which you've done. It's time to castle. And let's turn on Mr. Silicon. What does Mr. Silicon say? Surprise, surprise, castle. Castle, castle. Of course, castle. It's the opening. Play the opening move, castle. H4 is too greedy. And now comes this move, E5, and so now there's a direct threat of pawn takes. Or if knight takes, we've got knight takes. There's also the threat of the pawn form. So pawn takes, and E4, that's an excellent move. But it sure would have been a lot nicer if white wasn't forced to play these positions with the king still stuck in the middle of the board. So F4 is interesting. F4 is just kind of closing up the position. So now these bishops and queen are just kind of biting on the pawn here. Like this pawn's not really going anywhere anymore. That kind of really shuts down white's plan. Not sure if I like E4, says Sparry. I think he kind of had to play that though. Like, what did you think that he could have played here instead? See what Mr. Silicon thinks. He's actually suggesting castling is possible. And why can't I just play this? Knight takes, F takes, and bishop takes. This is not super good. This is not super good. I mean, it's giving bishop e2, knight e2. It said e4 is its first move. I'm sure it'll get back to that in a minute. I still think e4 is the right move. Bishop e2 is a good move as well. c5, very interesting. c5 is very, very interesting. Intending to get on the bishop diagonal, on the diagonal. And that's why when I'm teaching the Dutch to, I mean, I would only teach the Dutch to somebody who's trying to get closed positions. And in that case, I would recommend a Stonewall Dutch, because then you just get to close up that diagonal. You don't have to worry anymore about the attacks on your king. Okay, let's continue on, see how this goes. So pawn takes, bishop takes, knight to d5. I mean, I'm kind of liking this for black. It's interesting. Queen back. If knight takes and pawn takes, we've got major, major problems here for white. So the queen goes back to d1, bishop to g4. The question is here in this position, after the knight move, can white just play bishop takes? Can white just play bishop takes h2? So king over, bishop g6. Bishop g6, I might have knight takes. I don't know if I want to be opening that up. Oh, I've got this. Never mind. So bishop takes, king over, queen to g6. I'm just trying to get a handle on this position here, guys. Bertrand, first chess I have played since your simul. My fault for that. I mean, I thought that your first game you showed a little bit of rust when you missed that mate, but after that I thought that you played really good Blaze. But definitely I could see the improvements of Kingly, and I knew that Kingly had made some big gains in his rating, and I'd been watching him for a while. So I expected that to be a tough one. And it could have easily been a loss, but I think it was a fair result. You're going to have a tougher time. If you're not playing regularly, you're going to have a tougher time the next time. The next time could be the one that Kingly finally wins a match. I always enjoy these matches a lot. The games are really exciting and interesting. Okay, so let's see how this continues on. The queen goes back. Just out of curiosity, does the computer think? It does think that you can take this, but it's not that big of a deal. After queen takes, it's saying queen to d3, and then it likes queen to h5. Yeah, we're gonna get that pawn back. Okay, so the queen goes back once again. An aggressive move has tamed Blaze a little bit. And now we get this bishop to g4, knight up to b5, knight takes. Knight takes. Knight takes, pawn takes, queen takes. I mean, this looks really good for black to me. White can't castle. I mean, this is what happens when you get stuck in the center like that. And this all goes back to h4. Playing a middle game move in the opening. Uncalled for. h4 is uncalled for right now. You always castle before you start an attack. It seems like an innocuous move. It seems in this moment that, you know, White's king is quite safe. It's hard to think how is black gonna bust through his own pawns here. And yet all of the continuing play from e5 onwards, right? Forcing threat. Pawn takes, bishop takes, and then the knight forward, and the queen back. Bishop, knight takes, pawn takes, queen takes. This entire sequence took place because of the move h4. Playing a middle game move in the opening. So now White is forced to make a series of exchanges to relieve the pressure. Queen takes, bishop takes, king over, knight takes, pawn. Now this was an interesting point in the game. So I had an idea of what I wanted to play in this move, and maybe what Blaze played was better, but he was a little bit jumbled up here in this moment. He wasn't sure what to do. A little bit nervous. This knight move is dangerous. The knight is attacking the bishop. To me, this is a no-brainer. I would have played this move instantly. Now, the move that Blaze played was he played bishop to h5. But I had a different idea of what to play here. No feeling numb is in Eindhoven. That's my favorite soccer team in Netherlands. That is my favorite soccer or football team in Netherlands.
What we do here is go back.
PSV, that's correct. PSV Eindhoven. So here's the move that I thought, and I'm curious what you guys think about this. I would have immediately played this move, rook over to e8. Activity, right? In the event of f4, I'm going to play this bishop over. Now, it's not as clear-cut as what it looks. It's not really a winning a pawn. In the event of bishop takes, I'm going to do bishop takes knight. If he does bishop takes rook, I'll do bishop takes pawn. I'm fine with this position. The bigger issue is what happens if something like maybe even like, can I even castle? And if bishop takes, pawn takes, rook takes, and there's like rook here or something? Well, you can't do that because of the bishop. I mean, now can you take this? Rook to here and like pawn to here or something? Maybe something like this. So it's not as clear cut as all that. So maybe in retrospect, Blaze's move is the better move. But I would have played this without even thinking about it. Or sorry, this is yeah, that's right. Blaze is black here. Black seems better, says KB. Yeah, this is a very interesting position. Very interesting position. So the move bishop to h5 was played. I think it's still pretty equalish. Let's see what the computer says here. After bishop to h5, it's saying small edge for black, but very small. Very, very small. So king over to f1. Don't really get this move at all. I don't know why white wouldn't want to just castle. I guess the idea is he didn't want to lose his pawn. Is that it? Castles, he was afraid of bishop takes. Can I play bishop takes here now and then bishop back? If bishop takes, I have knight here. But you have bishop to f6. Interesting, interesting. Can I play this down, maybe? This is still a pretty dynamic game here, guys. A lot of stuff going on here. Okay, so king to f1, c6, bishop back to a2, bishop f6, knight d7. That's annoying. Maybe instead this bishop move is better. Bishop takes pawn. Interesting. Rook over. Rook to d8. Rook takes. I wonder if here is possible to play knight to e4. Oh, you can't because of the bishop. Never mind. Crud. Wow, interesting. So maybe this line was actually playable. Tell me bishop takes b2 is playable? King f1. Not the right move. Oh my god, Kingly just subscribed. This is the best I can do for such a good review. Oh, that's too kind of you, man. Wow, Kingly is a sub. Right on. That's 6 months, guys. RPD says, I like these Dutch and English defense f5 structures for black, as I like attacking usually the kingside castle. Yeah. Especially if you get that queen out. Now, the funny thing is that in the Dutch stone wall and those style of lines, there's two actually options. Number one, you can move your queen over to e8 and then over to h5. Or number two, you can make an interesting maneuver with your queen's bishop. Now, the queen's bishop is your bad bishop just in general. It's especially bad in a French, but it's especially bad in a Dutch stonewall. It's brutally bad because all of your black pawns are on white squares. So if you want to actually utilize it, you can maneuver it from c8 to d7 to e8 and then to h5 and do a similar maneuver as what you did with the queen. It takes longer, but you can get your bishop into play this way. The funny thing is that this bishop has ended up on h5 after all anyways. So rook takes, bishop to b3. I don't know why that move is being played. I guess he wants to guard this mate threat. I guess you can't even really play this rook up because there's check here and then boom. Bishop to f3. Okay, fair enough. I would have just moved my rook back, but rook over, rook back anyways. Rook up, that's a nice move. A direct threat to take the bishop, but Kingly's not getting hustled here. Kingly's not getting hustled here at all. Kingly, we need to arrange another match in a couple of months. Then the preparation can begin. Yeah, it's gonna be good, man. I always enjoy these matches, guys. I hope you guys do play again soon. So bishop down to d8. Nice move. Rook up to h3, man. These are some quality moves. takes, pawn takes, bishop takes, rook takes, and rook to d7. The rook needs to be in the action, Blaze. You can't be using your rooks to defend pawns in an endgame. You need to be active. Even if you play the move b6 and you know that this pawn push is coming, go for it anyways. Don't let yourself be bothered by that. Worst case scenario, you end up having to lose a pawn. You might not even have to worry about that. So you might not even have to worry about that. But if you're worried about that in this position here, you can just simply take a pawn. Don't worry too much about it. Okay. Okay, this is going to be as good as you're going to get. But by making this passive move, how are you supposed to make progress now in this position? Now, sometimes you can place that there temporarily, and it's not such a bad thing to be there. You do still have a lot of lines for your rook. Kind of curious what the computer says here. Computer likes b6, b5, and rook d7. Says they're all winning. It also says rook d1 winning. But on principle, to me, this is not working for me. Rook comes over, king g8, king f1, king f8, king e2. Maybe king e2 was a blunder because of that. Maybe something like rook. I still kind of think the rook over here is a nice square, because it's holding down the rook, tying down the rook. So let's go back to this position again here. So this is an interesting exchange here. Rook to d7 followed by rook to e3. Two moves I would never play. This rook can leave anytime it wants. The black rook can't. White's rook has the advantage. Now we get this rook to e7, rook takes, pawn takes, king up, and now we just got ourselves a winning king and pawn ending for black. b5, h5, a5, and the game was resigned. 1-0 for black. Let's go back to this position again here for a quick second. So let's say on rook to d7, if now, let's even say king to, well, all right, let's assume that white's going to continue on with the plan that they intended. Okay. Check or something. Check. Check. I don't really see where this rook is going. So what I would probably do instead in this position is king to g2. When the king comes out, king up. Whoops. King. Roll up my king some more. And if the king starts coming up this way, then I'm going to throw my f-pawn forward. And so now at some point in time, like it or lump it, black's going to have to make some sort of aggression with his pawns. And maybe now somewhere around here we can start trying some sort of swindle chances. At least there's a chance. Still looks pretty rough. Still looks pretty rough, but at least we could hope. Maybe this work. I'm still gonna get this. At least it was worth a try, though. Probably there was really never gonna be anything out of that, but maybe I wonder if this pawn push was playable. King up here, then we got pawn push again. Pawn push again. Alright, so let's get back into the chat, see what's going on. Also, as I mentioned earlier, you can try bishop to a6 at times and exchange the bad bishops that way. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's other ways, there's alternative ways and stuff like that. So I actually prefer the lines in the Dutch with... so here's like an example of the Dutch stonewall. So let's say here, e6, c4, f5, knight c3, knight c6, whatever. Knight f3, c6, e3, d5, bishop d3, bishop, knight, castles, castles. Okay, so you're gonna get a position like this. So somewhere around here you can make some decisions. Like RPD says, it's possible you can make a move like a6, b6 and try to come out this way. I don't like b6 ever in any of these lines. I don't like it in these lines. I don't like it in the French. If you find that style works for you, that's fine. It depends on what kind of a plan you have. I don't think it makes sense for me to move the b6 pawn blocking my own queen. Unless I already made a decision that I want to move my queen over to the king side. In which case maybe you can get away with that. But you really have to be committed. Like once you make that move, you've already made a decision. There's no more going back. Like you've also telegraphed to your opponent that there's nowhere else for me to go but over to the king side with my queen, because I literally can't walk through pawns. So I don't like that style myself. But again, whatever makes you feel comfortable, whatever you feel like is in keeping with your plan, that's what you should play. But here's where I was saying there's that option of where you could play the bishop move. So let's say, I don't know, whatever, and then here or something. Or something like this. And my idea is that maybe at some point in time I might bring my bishop out over this way. Another option is, let's say instead of doing that, let's say in this position they might try to go for the pawn breaks, try to break you open on the queen side, trying to get some activity quickly. And once again here, you can find yourself in one of these positions. I don't even really know what happens here. Something? Okay, so something like this. And then the other alternative is castles, and then queen to e8 with the intention of coming out to h5. And I like these lines because these pawns are really difficult to break up. They're really, really hard. White has to make a lot of committal moves to try to bust up those pawns before there's even a basic check on your king. And even if they do check, you just move your king out of the way. there's really never any danger to your king. So I really like that idea. And if white's not careful, they can get themselves into a lot of trouble. Let's say castles, castles, pawn, 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 queen over, pawn, queen up. Then maybe we can get in some of these kinds of lines. Yeah, something like this. This is very unpleasant. In fact, we can even just take that ball. I don't think rook d7 is such a big deal anyways. Black wins the endgame no matter where the kings are within reason, so you might as well position safely. I don't think rook d7 is a safe move. I disagree with that assessment, although you're correct that black is winning anyways. But it's really important to get that into your noggin that you have to keep your pieces active in an endgame. Because not every endgame is going to have the same result. If there's any swindle, if there's any defensive chance for your opponent, they're going to find it. So don't leave yourself in that situation. Don't put yourself in a position where you're using your rook for the defense of your lowly pawns. That's not the right timing to be doing that. Passed pawns must be pushed. Push your pawns, use your pawns to defend other pawns, use your rook for activity. Get aggressive, get your king into the game, get your rooks into the game, and make that a habit. Problem with the h5 lines is you run the risk of mate threat, followed by winning a7. I don't know what mate threat you're talking about. Rook e7 can cut off the king. Sorry, I'm so far behind on the chat here, guys. Idea was to use the rook to defend my pawns on the 7th rank and bring the king in to help with the pawn push, but that's not what your rooks are not supposed to be doing that, Blaze. So even if you can get away with it in that particular position, it's a bad habit to use your rook to defend pawns, especially in a rook and pawn ending. Your rook has to get active. Your rook has to get active. Your pawn is much better defended by playing the move d6. Much, much better defended. Max is just being a contrarian, that's okay. Blaze likes pizza, but you'll never catch him eating garlic bread, says Percy. I like white's b3 against the Stonewall. Okay. Once again, we got a house full of contrarians. Max and Sparry are just gonna, whatever I say, they're gonna say the opposite. Black is white, red is blue. I get it. I get it. You're wrong, but that's okay. You guys are all wrong. You're all wrong. Okay, so let's take a quick look at this last game. Take a quick look at this last game. Now, this one was a tie, so let's turn it around and take a look at it from white's perspective, which is Blazeroe. We've got c4, knight to f6, g3, e6. Sparry says my name is not wrong. Bishop to g2, d5. Now, this line I really like. Pawn takes, and d4. Now, this is a good opening I really like. Bishop to d6. Now, I'm not a d6 player. I usually put it on e7. The reason is because I know that someday the e4 break is coming, and I don't want to have to lose a tempo running away from the pawn forks. So anyways, knight, bishop to e6, okay. Knight to f3, castles, and c6. Okay, so I really like this pawn formation a lot for black. Stymies the bishop on the long diagonal. Okay. I had nightmares about king d3, king c2, and king to d1. Yeah, but like seriously, do you really think that rook d7 followed by a long series of, are you talking about in that position? Rook d7 followed by a long series of king moves to walk over and protect your still backwards b pawn before moving your rook? Do you really think that's more efficient than simply moving your pawn to b6 and then putting your king and rook wherever you want? It's just bad. It doesn't make any sense to me. Percy says, I don't understand bishop to d6. Yeah, so I'm thinking that Kingly's sticking with his game plan. He's going to launch some sort of an attack. He really wanted to take it to Blaze in this match and showcase his new skills, and I think he did that for the most part. And towards the end of this game, it was a complete win, and you guys are going to see the final position. This is a really nice comeback followed by easily winning position, and then I think Kingly was just chatting and confident in the position and just made a one-move blunder in a completely winning position, or else he would have won this game. So rook over to c1. That's a nice move. You're threatening moves like knight to b5. And then look at this. Ooh, bishop takes g3. What's going on here? Bishop takes, f takes, and queen takes. The bishop comes back to f2. That's a pretty interesting move. I thought at first he could try this knight move, but then I realized that his queen was hanging, his bishop's hanging. So this is actually kind of a dangerous position here. Bishop takes pawn is on tap. Can't even move out of the way because he's still got bishop takes pawn. Unless it's king over here and bishop takes pawn, he still has bishop to you. No, that's me. This is probably the only move on the board. Wow, this is really interesting. Curious what the computer thinks here. Queen e1 also. Yeah. All right, so queen back to g6. Burkout, how's the staycation? It's not too bad, Rayclay. I'm enjoying it. Yeah, the pawn versus the bishop. This is a really interesting endgame. Okay, I'm gonna do a quick bathroom break here, and give me 1 minute, guys. I will be back before this intro is done. All right, we're back. We are back. Kingly throwing up some Nigels, guys. If you have your Nigels, if you have any of these guys' emotes, by all means, please throw them in the air. Throw your Nigels in the air. We got KB in. We got Blazeroe8. Everybody's in here today, guys. What a good group. Do I have my chess comment? I do indeed. Where is he? I got we got Harlem in here. Where are we? There he is. Oh, we had Nut Fisher in here. Let's throw those up. Woo! Look at that, baby. All right. So let's see how this game finishes off. Queen at g6. Knight to h4. I'm really liking this game a lot, man. This is really exciting. Chess. I mean, this threat was still on if bishop takes pawn. I think you just move your king over to h1, to be honest, now, and play rook to g1. But I understand wanting to get that queen out of the way. So the queen comes to g5, the knight back to f3, and Kingly decides to go for queen h6. So keep in mind, we've had a draw and, is that right? A draw and then a loss by Kingly. No, wait, we've had one each, right? One each. Because yeah, Kingly won that first game. So a win and a draw. So if somebody doesn't win this game, then they're not going to win the match. Rayclay's got the knack of Snoopies. Wow. So Kingly's going for the gusto, man. Queen to d2. I mean, he's losing a lot of tempos with this queen over here. You know, so this attack has not really worked out. It was an interesting idea, but Blazer's a very good defender. He's done this against me too, where I had what looked like a very powerful attack, and he just defended extremely well and fought back and had a winning position. But he seems to have a little trouble closing the positions out. So queen to g5. He just wants to get rid of that queen now. Queen takes, knight takes. All right, so he's going to be up a pawn for 2 pieces, or piece for 2 pawns. Bishop to f5. E4. E4. Like, this is the kind of a reason why I don't like that bishop on d6. It's not there right now, so we don't have to worry about that. But that really bothers me if white can get a couple of quick tempo moves in, starting with e4. Bingley has to counter with h6. We get pawn takes and pawn takes knight, and bishop to e3. So, I mean, white is definitely getting the better of this. He's making use of his extra pawn piece. You have to figure out what he wants to do with his knight now on c3 and this rook on c1. So the material has been gained. It's time to consolidate and then break this position open and get into a pawn race in an endgame. So that's going to go back to h7. Here comes the rook over to e1. The pawn push. Bishop back to d2. I mean, that's a pretty scary threat already on e7, so black counters it. Rook takes, and rook over. Just going to try to swap off now. Rook takes and bishop takes. So, I mean, white's clearly better here, but he's not playing very ambitiously. And it's not like it's some sort of a cakewalk. I mean, these pawns are all weak. All of these pawns are very, very weak. It's still a close position for the most part. There's no more rooks or queens. So the 2 knights are definitely going to both be able to get hopping. So this isn't something you can just sort of generically play. You still have to figure out a plan as white here. So you got to be a little bit cautious. So knight's going to go back to f8. Knight to e2, knight to b6. I'm kind of zipping through this one a little bit. I really like this move b3. Taking away 2 of these squares from the pawn. That's fine. That seems like a really good idea. Yeah, you want to control your opponent's activity, keep them running around on bad squares. So the king's going to come up and defend this f pawn. So that's the problem with these backwards pawns and stuff like that. You don't want to be using pieces to guard pawns like that. Unfortunately, there's nothing to be done with all 3 of those pawns, the a, f, and d pawn. That's definitely not where you want to be. g6 gets to get rid of that pawn, but it comes at a price. The pawn push, and f5 is an excellent move. He's only got that one chance to do that. If he doesn't do it, then the pawn's going to push. And then maybe the knight's going to come to g3 and hop into f5 square. So black takes his advantage right now. Pawn forward, king to h3. If only I could finish this, Kingly. Knight to h7. So, Knight to h7, pawn takes, knight takes, king to h2, and knight to e5. Again, this is a series of, I don't want to say passive, but a series of not very ambitious moves that white's making. White is just content right now to swap these pieces off, swap everything off they possibly can. But this can be a fatal flaw, and you have to be very, very cautious, folks. Don't think that just because you're up some material, oh, I can just swap off. It could be, but don't make bad moves in order to try to swap off because you're afraid of the complications. Because you don't really want to think about the position anymore. You just want to win very easily. You still have to put the work in. And if you're not careful and you get too hasty to swap off, you can get yourself into trouble. And that's what happened in this game. Right away, knight to e4, boom. Bishop takes e4. Mistake. Let's see what the computer thinks. The computer considers moves like bishop to h4, bishop to h3, king to h3. And you can see here that in this position, it's saying that white has a substantial advantage still. But fearing the power of this knight, okay? Fearing this knight, which we only got to e5 in the first place because of these unnecessary exchanges. Just trying to simplify the position needlessly. You were already overwhelming with an extra piece. And now this move is a blunder. And now the position is going to start, the evaluation is going to start going down. It's already gone down half a pawn, and it's going to continue to go down from there. You're giving white black hope. And black could have also, in this case, by the way, could have played pawn takes and would have had 2 connected passed pawns, although this move is actually not quite as good. But you could have actually had that extra pawn. So you'd have had 2 passed pawns. That's a lot of... 2 passed pawns with a king and a knight guarding them, that's a lot of stuff, man. King to f5, bishop to... bishop to d2, knight to g6. So black is just playing patiently and trying for the hustle. There's nothing else to be done here. He's trying to put it to the test to white. Now white is starting to run out of pawns. If white loses this pawn, it's going to be very, very difficult to force a queen with these 2 pawns. No more passed pawns. This is still a very difficult position for white from a practical point of view. I was thinking bishop to h4 was good for him. Yeah, back in this position here. Yeah, bishop to h4 is interesting. Maybe knight back to c8. And then try to come up onto this square and then to b5. I don't think that this is the right maneuver because it's too easy to attack the square. Okay. So now we get b6. Knight hops in once again. Just trying to simplify. That's not... There's no real extra plan here. It's just trying to simplify. It's oversimplification, and I can understand why a person does that. And absolutely, if you're up material, you want to exchange if you get those opportunities. But you have to be very careful. You cannot try to force oversimplify a position. You can get yourself into trouble. You're playing moves that are not necessarily the best moves on the board in an attempt to simplify the position. Knight takes, bishop takes, c5, pawn takes. This is probably the last chance. Black has to play something like maybe bishop to e3. To think about this. It still actually really likes white's position here on thinking about it a little bit more. But I'm not as convinced. I'm not as convinced as the computer is. After pawn takes and pawn takes, that's 2 connected passed pawns in the center. They are very, very dangerous against that bishop. Check out how the evaluation has changed. Dead draw. Dead draw. Sparry says white is playing nicely. The knight is going to e3. Sparry likes bishop to d6 in this position. The computer suggests c4, b takes, d takes, king to f2, c3, king to e3, king to e6, bishop to b4, king to d5, bishop takes, king to c6. And this is a draw. The reason is because of the bishop is of the opposite color. So that's just a draw sparring. Ray Clay says, nice tan. That's partly artificial, although I did get a little bit of sun today. But that's mostly just an effect. Stay hydrated. Good idea. I'll keep some liquids going. Okay. So the bishop comes back. The pawn forward. Bishop back to f2. The pawn push. This bishop's getting kicked around. And look at this. Here in this position, if bishop takes, pawn takes, and king over, white can collect the half point and be pretty happy. Instead, on the bishop coming back, look at this. Kingly finds this move. Was there anything better? I think this is the only winning move. Kingly finds the only winning move. I should have left this as a position for you guys to try to figure out. Because I think a lot of you would have played this pawn move, but after king to f3, pawn push, bishop takes, pawn takes, and king back, this is still a draw. So the only winning move on the board, king to e4, and I think Kingly was in time pressure again. Black is winning, guys. Black is winning this game. The oversimplification has cost white. The slightly passive moves, the slightly oversimplification. It's a mind frame thing, guys. It's not even about the specific moves on the board. You got to get into the right mind frame for these positions. You're not consolidated yet. You're up a piece, but there's still technical difficulties in the position. Solve the problem of the pawns, and then you can swap off all you want. And although probably the position was winning most of that time for white, the mind frame has gotten into this, and now white is completely losing. King back, and it was only here in this position that Kingly finally makes his critical error. If Kingly had played king to f3, this is a mate in 5. And let's see the computer line. The computer says a3, d2. If bishop takes, then pawn takes. That's mate coming up pretty obviously. If the pawn goes forward, the pawn's going to come forward with the queen. That's going to be pretty obvious mate. So there's really not too much to see here after king to f3. And I think if just a couple of seconds of time to look at this, and I'm sure that Kingly would have spotted that. But instead, Kingly was talking to the chat and played the move e2. Oh, my Lanta. And Blaze gets out of the jam. Bishop takes, pawn takes, king up. King over. The computer, let's see what the computer recommends here. Computer recommends queening. Okay, that's whatever. King takes, and then king to d3. But I don't think this is winning, is it? King to c1 and king to c3? King a6. King a5. King a4. Oh my god, king to d2? Wait, does this freaking work? You've got to be kidding me, dude. No. No, it's not possible. You've got to be shitting me. Wait. Hold on. Hold on for a second here. Black magic, endgame play again. I usually screw these up. Now let's just hold on for a second. Was this still a win? Let's just take another look at that. Queen, king takes, opposition, building a wall. 3 squares that the white king cannot pass. Any move that the king makes, no matter what direction, the other king gets to make forward motion if it wants. Only one side can do that. So whoever's turn it is to move has lost opposition to the other side. Opposition means creating that wall of 3 squares with your king. So the king moves over, king, pawn, king, pawn. Now the computer is suggesting that white's best chance is b4. If c takes, it's suggesting a3. b3, king c1. Oh my god, guys. Spari, help me out here. Is this a freaking just a draw? It's just a draw, right? Let's go back to this position after b4. Whoops. If pawn takes, it's a loss. If b4, can I push the pawn? Ah, he's probably got king c1. Fuck. Oh man, I really want this to work just because it's so surprising. Pawn forward, a3, shoot. Ah, Kingly, I thought you had it, but this is a draw. Yeah. I just wondered, Sparry, if there was some way to like outflank the king, like triangulate the king like this. But there's just no way. Anyways, let's see how the game actually finished off, guys, because this is not how the game finished. They fought to the end. King over, king takes, pawn push, pawn, pawn, king, pawn, pawn, pawn takes, pawn takes, pawn, pawn, king takes, and king takes. And this is how the game ended. A fitting result at the end of that well-played match by both guys. Oh, Blazeroe8 donated $30. Aw. Nice listen, Bertrand. Thank you so much. I mean, you know, when I'm doing these, I'm definitely going to be objective. I'm definitely going to be hard on you guys over the moves that I think are showing a wrong sort of mind frame and stuff like that. But I just want you guys to know, and I hope that I conveyed an overall sense to you guys that I really enjoyed the way that you guys played. Kingly is clearly playing better. Kingly has gone up like 100 points, solid, in the last month or two, probably in the last month. But I really, really like these matches, and I'm thankful that you guys let me take a look at these games. I've taken a look at some of the individual games before for Blaze, but I really, really enjoy when you guys play a match, and I can't wait for round 4. This is your Blazeroe8 and KinglyBingly. Let's give them some shout outs, guys. A shout out for Blazeroe and a shout out for KinglyBingly. Another excellent, well-played match. I've played Kingly 1 match, and I've played Blazeroe 3 matches. But these two guys, for some reason, the way their styles mend, it's just they're very entertaining matches.